For decades, China's rise seemed unstoppable, transforming into a global factory tech powerhouse and lender to the world. But now, cracks are showing: a property crisis, a rapidly aging population, and new pressure from Europe threaten the very foundation of China's economic empire. Are these just temporary headwinds, or the first signs of a long decline that could reshape the global order? Let's find out. China isn't just a distant headline that you occasionally scroll past. It's not just a country on a map with a large population. It's the engine room of the global economy, the powerhouse that drives much of the world's commerce and trade. It's a central hub in the intricate web of international finance. The products you buy every single day, from the clothes you wear to the electronics that keep you connected, often start their journey in the bustling Chinese factories, where millions of workers are dedicated to production. These factories are the starting point for a vast global supply chain. This massive production capacity helps in keeping prices low worldwide, making goods more affordable for consumers everywhere. When China's economy booms and experiences rapid growth, countries from resource-rich Australia to industrial giants like Germany thrive, benefiting from increased trade and investment. But when it slows down, when growth stagnates or declines, the ripple effects are felt everywhere, impacting businesses and consumers alike. China's extensive investments and loans, particularly through initiatives like the Belt and Road, have made many nations heavily dependent on its financial health, creating a complex web of economic interdependence. Therefore, if China falters economically, it could trigger instability far beyond its borders, potentially leading to a global financial crisis. This instability could have direct consequences, affecting jobs, leading to rising prices, and even impacting the security of your pension and retirement savings. This isn't just about abstract GDP numbers and economic statistics. It's fundamentally about the stability and well-being of the entire world economy and the livelihoods of people across the globe. That's precisely why what happens in China, its economic policies, its growth trajectory, and its stability matters so profoundly to all of us, no matter where we live. The era of seamless globalization is ending. The US now sees China as a strategic rival, not just a competitor, sparking trade wars and tech restrictions. Global crises have hardened attitudes, pushing nations to choose sides. The world is fracturing into two blocks, the US and its allies versus China and its partners. This isn't a new Cold War, but a complex realignment. The big question: where does Europe stand in this divided world? For years, Europe navigated a complex geopolitical landscape, carefully balancing its security alliance with the United States against its burgeoning economic relationship with China. This delicate dance allowed European nations to benefit from both worlds, leveraging American military might while capitalizing on the vast opportunities presented by the Chinese market. But the winds are shifting, and that carefully constructed equilibrium is changing fast. A confluence of factors, both internal and external, are compelling Europe to reassess its strategic priorities and recalibrate its approach to both superpowers. The old assumptions are being challenged, and a new reality is taking shape. China is no longer viewed simply as an economic partner, but increasingly as a systemic rival. Concerns about unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and human rights abuses have eroded trust and fueled a growing sense of unease within European capitals. The perception of China has evolved from a mere market to a competitor with fundamentally different values and strategic goals. This shift in perspective is driving a fundamental reassessment of Europe's relationship with the rising superpower. In response to these growing concerns, Europe is increasingly aligning itself with the United States, forging a stronger transatlantic alliance to address the challenges posed by China's growing influence. This renewed partnership signals a departure from the pursuit of strategic autonomy and a return to closer collaboration with Washington. This alliance is focused on defending its industries and securing its supply chains, recognizing the vulnerabilities exposed by recent global events and the need to protect critical sectors from undue influence. A key area of concern is China's state-backed push into high-tech sectors, particularly in areas like semiconductors and artificial intelligence. Europe is determined to maintain its competitive edge in these critical industries and prevent China from gaining a dominant position. To counter these perceived threats, the EU is launching anti-subsidy probes, scrutinizing Chinese companies operating within its borders and investigating potential unfair trade practices. The EU is also threatening tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, a move aimed at protecting its domestic automotive industry from what it sees as unfair competition from heavily subsidized Chinese manufacturers. This aggressive stance represents a direct challenge to Beijing, signaling a willingness to confront China on issues of trade and economic policy. For China, facing a united front from its two biggest trading partners, the United States and the European Union, presents a significant challenge to its global ambitions and economic stability. This united front is a nightmare scenario, potentially disrupting its trade flows, hindering its technological advancement, and undermining its geopolitical influence. The previous era of strategic autonomy, where Europe sought to chart its own course independent of both the US and China, is increasingly giving way to a renewed transatlantic consensus driven by shared concerns about China's rise. As these alliances solidify and new strategies are implemented, the global balance of power is undeniably shifting, creating a new era of geopolitical competition and uncertainty. The EU's investigation into Chinese EVs triggered Beijing to retaliate with a probe into French cognac, a classic pressure tactic. But this time, Europe didn't back down. Instead, it used the dispute as leverage, forcing China to the negotiating table. The standoff revealed China's vulnerability. It's willing to bargain over minor issues to protect its key industries. Europe's new assertiveness, coordinated with the US, is boxing China in from multiple angles. Recent trade deals show the West is using both pressure and negotiation to achieve its goals. The rules of engagement have changed. China's biggest threat may be internal, a mountain of debt tied to its property sector. The collapse of giants like Evergrande exposed a cycle of overbuilding and risky borrowing. Now, unfinished buildings and angry homebuyers are everywhere, and local governments are strapped for cash. The property slowdown is dragging down the entire economy, shattering consumer confidence. With exports under pressure and domestic demand weak, China is caught in a vicious cycle. The government's options are limited: stimulate spending or risk deeper stagnation. The debt crisis makes China vulnerable to external shocks like never before. China's one-child policy has created a demographic crisis. Its population is shrinking and aging faster than any major country. By 2050, nearly 40% will be over retirement age, straining pensions and healthcare. A shrinking workforce means higher costs and less growth, eroding China's manufacturing edge. Automation can help, but it can't replace the energy of a young, growing population. China is racing to get rich before it gets old, but time is running out. Demographics are now a permanent brake on China's ambitions. Chinese consumers are anxious. Property values are falling, jobs are scarce, and the future feels uncertain. The government wants to shift to a consumption-driven economy, but people are saving, not spending. Youth unemployment is high, stifling the next generation's economic potential. Weak consumer confidence means China still relies on exports, just as the West is closing its doors. This internal fragility is a critical vulnerability. The silent shoppers are a warning sign. The foundation is shaky. Is China collapsing? The question hangs in the air, a subject of intense debate among economists, political analysts, and global strategists. Is the seemingly unstoppable force of the Chinese economy finally faltering? Are the cracks in its foundation widening to a point of no return? Not in the dramatic Hollywood-esque sense, its government remains strong, characterized by a centralized authority and a firm grip on power. A sudden implosion, a complete societal breakdown, is highly unlikely given the current political landscape and the resilience of its institutions. But the narrative of an unstoppable Chinese ascent, the relentless upward trajectory that defined the past few decades, is undeniably over. The double-digit growth rates, the seemingly endless expansion of its manufacturing sector, and the rapid urbanization are now relics of a bygone era. Deep internal problems, challenges that were once overshadowed by the country's economic miracle. Debt, a mountain of it accumulated through years of infrastructure projects and real estate speculation. Demographics, a rapidly aging population coupled with a declining birth rate, creating a shrinking workforce and a strain on social security systems, and weak confidence, eroded by economic uncertainty, regulatory crackdowns, and geopolitical tensions, are combining to slow growth significantly, casting a long shadow over the nation's economic prospects for the long term. The easy gains have been made, and the path forward is fraught with obstacles. The new increasingly united front from the West, a coalition of nations wary of China's growing influence and assertive foreign policy, is hitting China at its weakest point, exacerbating its internal vulnerabilities and limiting its options on the global stage. Making economic recovery even harder, a complex and arduous task in the face of both domestic headwinds and international pressure. Instead of a dramatic collapse, think stagnation, a prolonged period of slower growth, limited innovation, and persistent economic challenges. China will undoubtedly remain a powerful force in the world, possessing a formidable military, a vast industrial base, and significant geopolitical influence. But its influence and economic growth will likely plateau, settling into a new normal of moderate expansion and increased competition. The once ubiquitous dream of a Chinese century, a future dominated by Chinese economic and political power, is fading, replaced by a more uncertain and complex outlook. The world must adapt to a new reality, a multipolar world where China is still a major player, but no longer the undisputed rising superpower. One where the dragon, while still powerful, is no longer soaring effortlessly above the clouds, its wings clipped by internal challenges and external pressures. Subscribe for more in-depth analysis and thought-provoking content, and keep wondering about the ever-evolving dynamics of our world. Don't miss out on future explorations and discoveries. Hit subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated with our new content. Your journey of wonder continues with every video. Stay connected and engaged on social media. Continue the conversation, follow us. Thank you for being a part of the Have You Ever Wondered community. Keep wondering, keep discovering. Until next time.